Imagine a morning, a regular flight out of Miami. Passengers board the plane, they read newspapers, drink coffee, no one suspects anything. And somewhere in Washington, in an office with a flag and a portrait of the president, a general signs a document. In that document it says, the plane must disappear, not because of a technical failure, not because of pilot error, but by design, and the people inside, they are already accounted for as necessary losses. This is not a scene from a movie. This is not a journalist's invention. This is a real document. It is called Operation Northwoods. It was signed in 1962, and it still exists. You can find it online right now, and what's written inside will change the way you look at any war, any terrorist attack, any crisis. Watch this video until the end, because at the end, I will show you a specific page from this document, and one fact that major media still prefer not to talk about. To understand Operation Northwoods, you need to understand what the world was like in 1962. The Cold War was not a metaphor. It was a real fear that lived in every home. Soviet missiles, nuclear bombs, an arms race that could end civilization in 30 minutes. And just 90 miles off the coast of Florida stood Fidel Castro. A year earlier, in 1961, the United States made one of the biggest mistakes in its history. The Central Intelligence Agency gathered about 1,500 Cuban exiles. They were trained, armed, and promised support, and then sent to Cuba, to the Sidney Sweeney. The operation failed in just 72 hours. Support never came. There was no uprising. They were left alone against Fidel Castro's army. Most were captured. The rest were killed. Castro became a triumph figure, and Kennedy took a serious political hit. But the real story began after that. In the atmosphere of failure, deep within the Pentagon, a new plan was born. If we cannot remove Castro directly, we need a pretext. We need an incident. We need a provocation that will make the American people demand war. Operation Northwoods was a secret memorandum prepared by the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. In simple terms, it was written by the highest military leadership of the country, not one rogue general, the entire committee, collectively. The document was addressed to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, and it contained a detailed plan of provocations designed to justify a military invasion of Cuba. What exactly was proposed? First, to stage a series of terrorist attacks on U.S. soil and blame them on Cuba. Explosions in Miami, Washington, New York. Second, to sink a ship with American soldiers and declare it a Cuban attack. The document explicitly mentions preparing casualty lists for American newspapers. Third, to shoot down or destroy a U.S. civilian aircraft, simulate an attack by Cuban MiGs, broadcast fake radio communications. Fourth, to organize a wave of violence in Miami against Cuban exiles and blame the Cuban government. Every point was described in detail: logistics, media strategy, press reaction scenarios. This was not a draft scribbled on a napkin. This was an official strategic document of the United States Armed Forces. And here comes the question that doesn't go away. How was this even possible? How could people, educated, sworn to duty, with families, calmly discuss killing their own citizens as a political tool? The answer is uncomfortable, but important. In conditions of existential fear, when people believe civilization is at stake, moral boundaries begin to shift. The logic was simple and horrifying at the same time. If Cuba, with Soviet missiles, poses a threat to millions of Americans, then a few victims of a provocation is a price worth paying. This is called a false flag operation, and history knows far more of them than we'd like to admit. The Reichstag fire in 1933, the Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam, many other cases where real or staged attacks became the pretext for war. Northwoods was a logical continuation of that pattern. The difference is, this time the document survived. Let's look at specific details, because this is where abstraction becomes real. The document contains a section titled Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba. One proposed scenario reads, charter a civilian aircraft, replace the passengers with military personnel under civilian identities, stage its destruction over Cuba, and then publish lists of the deceased passengers, real names, real obituaries, fake deaths, meant to trigger real outrage. Another scenario: organize the explosion of a U.S. military ship in Guantanamo Bay and blame Cuba. The authors directly referenced a precedent: the explosion of the USS Maine in 1898, which helped trigger the Spanish-American War. They didn't hide the inspiration. They studied history and intended to repeat it. And here the story takes a turn that changes everything. The document was passed to Secretary of Defense McNamara, then to the President. John Kennedy read it and rejected it completely, immediately, without discussion. More than that, he removed the general responsible for the plan from his position. It would seem the story ends here. A dangerous plan was stopped. Democracy worked. But here's what matters. Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963, less than 2 years after rejecting Northwoods. I am not claiming a connection. No one can prove it with certainty, but the question exists. And it doesn't go away, because when you see a document where top military leadership calmly plans the killing of its own citizens, you begin to look at everything from that era differently, not with paranoia, with awareness of what is possible. Operation Northwoods was declassified in 1997, 35 years after it was written, not because of journalism, not because of a leak, but as part of routine declassification of the Kennedy files. No one was held accountable, no one was prosecuted, no official apology was made. The document simply appeared, filed away, and most people never heard about it. That is the real lesson of this story. Not that governments are capable of terrible plans. We already know that, but how easily such things disappear into silence. Northwoods was never carried out because one man said no. How many other operations never had their Kennedy? Now, what I promised at the beginning. Page 32 of the original document, Section 8, Paragraph 4. It states, develop a plan to blow up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay and place the blame on Cuba. Use the incident to attract international attention to the situation. This is not interpretation, not a journalistic conclusion. This is an instruction written by American generals for the American government against American citizens. The document is available on the official website of the U.S. National Archives. Right now, if Kennedy had not stopped this operation, do you think the world today would look different? Or do such plans always find a way, just under different names? Write your answer in the comments. If this video made you see the world a little differently, that's exactly why this channel exists. We don't retell textbooks. We find what never made it into them. Like the video, it's the only thing you need to do to help more content like this appear. And subscribe, because the next video is already in progress, and it will go even deeper.